We know a deal has been reached, if not finalized, following months of negotiations over a renovated Jaguars stadium. This agreement was first reported by Florida Times Union Metro columnist David Bauerlein. He joins me now. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Ann.
So you are going to be following this issue a lot in the days and weeks ahead. What should the public be paying attention to?
Yeah, I think there's several things they should pay attention to. One is, what's the deal's cost going to be? The figure's been out there. It's about $1.4 billion to renovate the stadium. Basically, the designs the Jaguars showed last year, a roof, bigger concourse, more escalators, the features that will really renovate and modernize the stadium for NFL standards. The other thing, so that's part of the fan experience thing to look for. And then from the taxpayer standpoint, the big question is, what's the share going to be for the city? What percent of that 1.4 billion is going to come from taxpayers? What percent will come from Shad Khan and the NFL? There's also questions about if the Jaguars were going to ever leave during the term of a 30-year lease. What sort of penalties would there be in the contract that would prevent them from doing it or make them pay a price in terms of making a relocation? So there'd be a non-relocation agreement. There's still a big question about whether the Jaguars would play their home games away in the 2026 and 2027 seasons, or maybe just the 2027 season, because there's going to be massive reconstruction work being done on the stadium in time for it to be open for the 2028 season, if there is a deal finalized by City Council. So those are important things to look for. Mayor Donna Deegan has talked a lot about a community benefit portion of the agreement, which is
what is that?
How much would the Jaguars actually provide over the term of the lease to improve neighborhoods in economically distressed areas? So that'll be an important part of it. So those are some of the highlights that we may be looking for. And then Tuesday is when they're supposed to provide some of that information to the public and City Council.
And so Tuesday, as we're expecting at that council meeting, the announcement, that's what President Ron Salem has said he expects. And he's actually going to be on the program Thursday, hopefully to talk a little bit more in detail about his impressions of the deal. But the public has been, the indication has been that the public will get maybe a couple weeks of meetings to weigh in. Is there any sense that the public has any ability to meaningfully shape the deal, or is the deal kind of what it is and it's what it's going to be?
Yeah, I don't expect that those public meetings are going to materially change the deal. I mean, if there's a cost share in the deal, and whatever that percent is a lot of people showing up at a public meeting saying that's way too much for the taxpayers to pay, going to cause a change in it. I really don't think so. That would not be the way these things usually play out. It's possible if there's just everybody comes up and there's a big backlash to it, maybe they could have that change. I think a lot of the public feedback is going to be really could give a sense of whether taxpayers think that it's outrageous, and whether that changes the shape of the deal, I doubt it, but whether it changes whether City Council support it, maybe.
How about the design element? I mean, a lot of the focus, and I think my own focus, has been kind of on this Millennium Bean looking, superstructure that is the roof. But if you look more closely, in fact, there, kind of the interior is really crosshatched with beams and a lot of kind of structural blockage of the central opening. We talk about how renderings maybe don't quite resemble what, in reality, what they turn out to be. But I wonder if in reality, this one is going to look a little different than we expect, just because we're sort of not focusing on that element, which is a really kind of heavy structural exoskeleton that covers over, sort of maybe will dominate more than that outer loop.
Yeah, the outside is like, I love that comparison of the bean, the outdoor statue in Chicago. Yeah, it's kind of got a space age vibe with the metallic reflective material. It's supposed to be first of its kind and all that kind of thing. The inside of it, quite honestly, Ann, I hadn't really fixated on that particular thing you're bringing up in terms of what it's going to look like inside. But that's a good question to look at in terms of what is the actual feel going to be when you're in there. It's going to have a roof that's going to provide some shade because they're basically kind of building the new stadium kind of on top and around a portion of the existing stadium that's going to stay. It's got a lot of structural support. There's some things they have to do to be able to get airflow coming in and out. Whether function, whether form pays a price for function in that case, that's a good question. We'll take a closer look at that in terms of what it'll look like. It's supposed to have better views for its fans because it's going to the state people are going to feel closer to the field in terms of this new layout for the fan experience.
So, your organization, my organization, we've all submitted public records requests
Mm-hmm.
asking for the term sheet on this deal. We haven't gotten it yet. But as your colleague Nate Monroe pointed out, there's no exemption, public records exemption for, well, we really want to launch this, at a certain time, and therefore we'd prefer not to release that information ahead of time. What is your expectation about actually getting some of that information in your hands to report on prior to Tuesday?
Well, my expectation would be that the city would provide that prior to Tuesday because Nate's exactly right. It's not that the city can't say, well, we haven't finalized this or this I's not dotted or this T's not crossed. It's whatever they have at this time in terms of draft agreements. And so, certainly under public records law, the expectation would be that it's not a burden for the city to provide those. They have them. We're not asking them to go into a vault and go through boxes that are buried in some basement. They're documents they have easily at their fingertips. So it seems like public records law and complying with it would be the spirit of transparency to provide what they have as they have it. And if there's still, it's not a complete product, then the responsible thing as reporters is to say this is not the final version, but here's what we have at this point. And that, quite frankly, that should tell us a lot of the information we want to know.
Yeah. Um, in terms of the city's record on negotiating deals, and then overseeing the contract as it's written, it hasn't had a great reputation. I mean, there even was a grand jury investigation, in my time in this city when the shipyards deal went south and the city lost $36 million and got, a big goose egg for it. Is there more faith that the city is doing a better job of watchdogging contracts and making sure that things remain within budget and that things are on time and, actually that the city's getting what it's promised?
That seems to be the case on some of the deals the city has done with the Jaguars so far. I mean, they did the Sports Performance Center. That seemed to have worked out pretty well from the city and the Jaguars' perspective. The thing on this deal here is I think the important thing to understand is the city is not starting from square one on this. There are a template that's out there for other NFL agreements with other cities. So the actual parameters of the deal are kind of shaped by what's already been done. So I'm saying it's not fill in the blank at all, but the negotiations are kind of within that framework. So whether that makes people feel better or worse about the city's negotiating, I don't know. But it's not like they're out there kind of completely redrawing or starting from scratch on how to do this deal. The oversight of it and the enforcement of it is, there's that would be a big question in terms of making sure that the city gets what it expects. I mean, obviously there's renderings. Are they actually built as portrayed? So there would be some monitoring on that. Usually on these deals, if there's overruns, it's picked up by the Jaguars. That'll be another thing to look for. If there's higher costs, how's that? Who bears that cost? So obviously it's a huge deal. The city's never had so much tax money at stake. They really would need to be able to show that they can make sure that the city taxpayers get what they expect for this massive investment in the stadium.
Well, holding them to account, we know that you're going to be doing that, and we're going to be following very closely your reporting. David Bauerlein from the Florida Times-Union, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.